morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. It is September 2nd here. It's been 2 months since I was with you for the live. On the first Friday in August, I was in Long Beach, California for International Quilt Festival out there. For someone who lives in the deep south, going to Long Beach, California in August is wonderful. Their weather is pretty spectacular out there. It did get into the 90s and the locals were just really complaining something fierce, but most days it's in the 70s and it's low humidity and the views are beautiful. There's a lot of water and anyway, so really enjoyed that trip a lot. So that's why I wasn't here on the first Friday in August. It's now September and we're moving right along. We've come to month 9. For me, the end is in sight. We're very close to the end. And I think for those who have kept up with this, you must have figured out how your techniques are doing, how you're making the stems and the circles and the leaves, because there's very few questions on the forum this year, which is unusual, to say the least. So I'll give people a chance to check in here. I'm going to take a look and see if I can see some comments. And I think I can. Yep, there's Victoria. There's some other folks there. Cool. Hello, friends. And San Antonio. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so there are some people joining us, and what I'm going to do this morning, I'm going to first show my block 9 that's in my sample quilt that we made last year, and then we'll talk just a little bit. I'll switch to the document camera and talk a little bit more about it, and then tiny stems and circles. I think by now, as I said, most of you have figured out what your technique is for doing those things. And then we're going to spend some time this morning talking about preparing for the diamond borders, because that starts in October, month 10. I want to bring a few things to your attention, things for you to think about before we jump right in there to the diamond borders, because that's really going to finish off your quilt beautifully. So my block I didn't make another one of these blocks this year because this one was already done. And this is in my sample quilt. Remember, my Sunday So-and-sos helped me get this made last year. We made the entire quilt in about 8 weeks. And my friend Jody made this one for me. I had cut kits for everybody. I picked all the fabrics from my stash. And she actually did this one by needle turn applique. It's the only block on the whole quilt that's completely needle turn applique. But that's what Jody wanted to do, and that she did that. So it's got this beautiful urn. I love the shape of this vase. It has a band across the top, and then it's got some tiny little stems over here, little narrow stems, lots of berries, a couple different, and then a wider stem. It's got the 1/4-inch stem, and then some leaves and some more circles. So that's beautiful. On my blog that you've seen and that I write, of course, each month for the Quilt Show, we've got the picture of Irene's as well, and it's also in the pattern each month. You can see what Irene's looks like for hers in particular. So let me switch now to our document camera. And there you go. Okay. So the sketch, this is the picture, of course, from for the month 9 block. I think it's really interesting because we do have some different shaped leaves and the different stems. And as I mentioned, I love the shape of the urn. I have made some of these 1/8-inch stems, and I use Karen Buckley's Perfect Stems technique. I did write about this and showed it in the video that I made for month 9. But basically, and this was just a little sample that I threw together so you could see it again here. Her measurements tell you that whatever the finish size is that you want to make, and this was 1/8 of an inch, you multiply that by 5, and that's what size to cut the fabric, so 5/8. That's still pretty narrow. You fold it in half, and I like to use the number 10 foot. It's an edge stitch foot. It really has this great little guide that'll keep you straight all the way down. But before you don't take the stem out till you're ready to press it. You've still got to trim away some of this excess. If you leave the seam, when you turn it over, if you don't get it just right, you'll have some little, some of that extra fabric sticking out of the outside edge. So it's just while the stem is still in there, the plastic stem, and it is possible to sew through these. I did it when I was practicing on one of these about a month ago, but you would just trim right along here, just pretty close to get rid of some of this excess seam allowance. And then you turn it when you're at the iron, and you just turn it over and get it. And I used some starch, or you could use Best Press or magic sizing, steam, even water, and get it really, really flat. And that's a pretty narrow stem. So that worked nicely. And then I would just push the stem, the plastic back here, and cut off the shape, the size that I need. So that's how I did the little 1/4-inch stems. And I'm going to show you month 10 blocks because I've done some of those here recently. But that's how, and I found this to be pretty helpful with the little narrow. If I'm doing a stem that's 1/4-inch or wider, I'm still doing my technique, which I multiply by 3, and I cut it and fold it in thirds. And that's what I do for that. Now, then you need a bunch of berries. And as I mentioned on the blog that I did and the video for these little berries, I do like Karen Buckley's little Templar circles. And this I just do as a busy work watching TV. I use a template, a circle template. This one was designed a long time ago by Pat Andriotta is her name. And back when we were doing a lot of applique in the 80s, probably if it's copyrighted on here. Well, it doesn't say, but a long time ago. But you can pick up these, they're circle templates, and you can get them at office supply stores in the drafting section. And it's great because they have all the different size, lots and lots and lots of circles. So all I have to do is find the size circle template that I'm going to use, the little Templar, and then I add a 1/2 inch to that, and that tells me what size circle I draw around. Then I sit there at night cutting out the circles on the drawn line. I use a pencil and draw them, and then just do some, I use quilting thread because it's strong enough that I can really pull it hard and not have it snap on me. And I just sit there and do that, and when I'm ready to make these, I lay my little circle in the middle and then snug it. Oh, come on. Don't you know people are watching here? Get in there and just snug it up really tight. If you have too much fabric, and this one is almost on, yes, I would say this is on the verge of too much fabric for this little tiny circle, you end up having excess that's kind of bumpy. And so you want to have not too much and not too little, and you'll eventually figure out how much that is. But you need to make a whole bunch of these. So for this month, obviously there were quite a few circles. But let me show you next month, because this is what I've been actually working on. There are 2 of these long skinny blocks in month 10. There are 2 different ones in month 11. We start out with bigger fabric, of course, like normal, and then we would trim it down. It'll be trimmed to 6.5 by 12.5. So this is one of them. This is the first one. I think it's 16A is what it's called. And it does have the little 1/4-inch or 1/8-inch stems. There's some narrow stems, a 1/4-inch stem, 2 different shapes of leaf, or one shape of leaf, and then these flowers. And I just love this vase, and I was real happy when I stumbled across this fabric in my stash. I thought that's really pretty as a vase. So I got this one done. This is all hand applique. I do not cut the excess, my back away. I leave my back in place. Oops, just so you know. All right, and then this one I'm still in the process of. I worked on this last night. This one is also for month 10, so you'll get these patterns in on 1st of October. It has the narrow stems and a bunch of circles. There are no leaves, there's just stems and circles, and this really attractive vase shape. I like it as well. So I thought I was making good progress on these stems, and then I realized, or circles, but there are 23 of these little circles on this pattern. So I have 10 of them in place, and now I have to sew down 13 more. I'll do that over the next couple of nights when I'm watching television. But so this is what's coming for the month 10 in the applique phase of it. I really like these. I like the shape. It's tall and skinny, and you will put these 2 together. They will, as I said, trim. You'll make next month, you'll trim them 6.5 by 12.5, and then you'll sew them to each other. And so you'll have 2 of these long skinny ones. These go on the left side of the quilt. Once you get that done for month 10, you'll be able to put that middle together, if you haven't already put the middle together, and you can put the left side on. And that's important before you start working on the borders. So let's talk now about that. Go back here so we can talk. Okay. All right. So check my notes. Now, if you're not caught up, that's perfectly fine. This is a lot of work. Certainly the first couple of months were really more labor intensive as people learned the techniques that they wanted to use, and I understand that. And sometimes life intervenes, and I understand that too. The only important thing to make sure that you're doing is securing some way the patterns each month, whether you save them to your computer, you save them to a thumb drive, you print them out, you have them as a backup, because as I will continue to remind you quite a bit here in the next 3 months, December 31st is when, after that, we no longer have the rights to these patterns. They revert to Irene Blank, the designer, and we can't give them to you. It's terrible if your hard drive crashed or you lost them somehow or you bought a new computer, but we can't give them to you. It's contractual that we only have the rights to provide these through December 31st. So do whatever you need to do to make sure that you're saving them, and you'll have them when you're ready to make them. So that's the first thing that's important. But the diamond borders are coming next. So the live for October it's always on the first Friday of October. Well, for October, that happens to be October 7th. By then, many of you will have jumped right in and gotten started. So it is going to be very important that you watch the videos for month 10. And I've done the one on the applique blocks. Now I have to do the one on the borders. And there may end up even being 2 of those. One, Irene's method. She does hers by applique, hand applique. She made these diamonds. And then I figured out how to piece it because I had a time limit and I knew I needed to get it done quickly. So I pieced them. And you will have complete instructions on how I did mine. And then you'll have Irene's instructions on how she did yours. So there will be blog posts about that. There will be the videos. It'll be very important before you start that you read those things and ask questions before you start, not after you get in. So the first thing I want to mention about that is that the pattern will tell you to cut the borders a certain length. And the length that they say to cut them is it's 62.5 inches. That's the length that tells you to have your 4 borders, because there are also 4 corner squares. But that 62.5, there's 2 things about that you need to be aware of. That is the precise measurement your quilt top should be. If you've done everything perfect from top to bottom on that, let's talk about the left-hand side, because October 10th, it's the left-hand side that we're doing. October 1st, she talks about the left-hand border. If my border, my quilt, was 63 inches, it had grown 1/2 inch over the course of that 62.5. I was 1/2 inch too big. I could either try to find where I had gone off, and it's from the seams that you've sewn where you'd added the blocks. Or because I was 63 inches on both sides, I just decided to go with it. But if yours has grown to 63 and you cut borders 62.5, that's not going to work. So you need to have at least your left side completely assembled before you cut the borders, so you will know what size yours needs to be. I hope that makes sense. So that's the first thing to be aware of. The next thing to be aware of is that the kit fabric for the border is similar to what Irene used. But the stripes, it's that, remember there was this packet that said save, this is the binding, and then this is the border fabric. And I put this away in January, just like it said, to put it away so that I have it now and didn't accidentally cut it into something else. Okay. The border on the stripe on this fabric runs parallel to the selvage this way. So your instructions will be to cut these into strips. You will need 8 strips, and you'll be cutting them 6 inches. Again, I don't want you to jump into this ahead, but that'll get you started. Then you have to take 2 of those. You'll need 8 altogether because there's 4 borders, and this, of course, is only about 44 inches, and we need at least 62.5. So then you'll have to take 2 of these and remove the selvage on one end of each, and then carefully piece this together so that you try to get your stripe lined up. If you don't have the stripe 100% lined up, don't leave it dead in the middle. Just have it off center, and then you'll be able to cover that seam with a diamond. But I will talk much more about this in the blog. I will talk much more about this in the video. I'm just giving you a tip right now because I know some of you are already eager to start chopping into this fabric. So that is the Irene's method that she has. You cut these borders, the length, and the 62.5, again, as I mentioned, that's the exact precise measurement. You know, and there are 20 diamonds on the side. The 20 diamonds, when you applique those, you know what happens sometimes with applique? We usually start with a larger piece of fabric, a longer length, and then trim it down. So again, the 62.5 is exact, and I would, if I was appliquing it, I would have cut them longer, maybe 63.5, maybe even 64. There is enough fabric to do that. So if I was going to applique it, I would do that. I can always trim it off later. I don't want to have to add back another 3/4 of an inch at the end. The one other thing to mention, because I know some of you have probably already started on this, the diamonds are 3 inches across the middle. They're 60-degree diamonds. And there are 20 of them on a side. Well, 20 times 3 is 60. But the border is 62. So once they get placed, as you're appliquing them, and this is her method, Irene's method to applique them, you need to have a little bit of space in between the diamonds. How much space? 1/10 of an inch. That's less than 1/8, just a little. Or you can simply start, and she has you start in the middle and put 10 on one side of the center and 10 on the other side of the center. If you do that and they exact touch each other all the way, so that you have 60 inches of diamonds, you will have 1 inch of space on the left and 1 inch of space on the right. And that would be another alternative that you could do as well. So that's a possibility. I, as I mentioned, wanted to piece it. I just didn't have the time that it was going to take to applique them. And I was appliquing by machine, and I was pretty certain I could not put all 20 of those on the border glued or pinned, however, and put it under my machine and not have them move when I was trying to applique them. So my only other thought was for machine applique, I could place one on the border, applique it, take it out of the machine, put the next one down, put it back under the machine, applique it. And I said, nah, there's 80 of those. I don't see that happening. So I pieced it. And so I'm just going to mention that, and I'm going to put this back under the document camera for just a minute. So I can show you what this looks like. But why I'm talking about this today is because I want you to give this thought. If you are going to piece it, and you will have 5 solid pages of instruction that I have written on how to piece it, as well as how to add floater borders to make your pieced border fit the center of your quilt. We've got lots of that information, and it's already been written, and you will have it come the 1st of October. But I chose not to use a striped fabric for piecing, because once I cut them up and pieced them, there's no way I could be certain I was going to align those little teeny tiny stripes just right. And several people have said when they thought about that, they said it would drive me crazy if my stripes didn't line up just right. And I would certainly agree with that. So I'm going to put this under the camera and show you the fabric that I chose to use for my background on my border. If you are going to piece it, my recommendation is that you find a different fabric for the border, and not a directional, not a stripe, something else that you're happy with. The stripe is a beautiful piece of fabric. I will use it somewhere when it's the perfect piece of fabric for the place I choose to use it. But right now, if you're thinking about that you're going to piece this instead of applique, it would be a time to start looking for something else. And let me show you up close here what I chose. Okay, I think you can see this. I don't know the manufacturer. It may have been in my closet for a year. I may have bought it new. It's a soft gray, which is hard to see under these lights. It's a very soft gray with little white circles. It's just so pretty. And you don't even see the little circles until you get this close. But this worked out really well. And so the piecing process, which you'll have the detailed instructions on, you'll cut every one of these equilateral triangles exactly the size they need to be. You'll cut every one of the diamonds exactly the size you need to they need to be with a rotary cutter. I'm going to give you all of those measurements. And then I sewed these together in these units. I've got a diamond here, a triangle on this side, and another triangle here. So that's one, there's another one here, and all of this will be in the video. Don't worry, I'm just trying to show you this. And then when you sew them together with these diagonal seams. As I mentioned, the fact that this is 3 inches across, 3 times 20 is 60. My quilt was 63, including seam allowances. So I knew that I needed 21 of these diamonds. I couldn't use a half a diamond. I needed a full diamond. So mine was going to be, my pieced border will be longer than the center of my quilt. And that's kind of standard. That's actually what you want. And then I calculated how to make this floater border. This thing is 3/4 of an inch finished, this little floater border. And again, it's the same fabric that I used, that pale gray with a little white dot, to make this fit exactly. It's a trick. It's the best trick I ever learned from Sue Garman. And it's her instructions. I've written them out for this quilt, specifically how I did it and how you can do it, so that but you have to make this before you can calculate this. These measurements are figured after you have your pieced border, so you know what is the gap between the quilt body and the border that I need to fill. And we want to put half the gap here and half on the other side of the quilt. And you'll do the same at the top and the bottom. And then just as I mentioned, the other thing is that because I had this narrow piece here, I also went ahead and put the same fabric on the outside. It's a little bit wider, and I thought ultimately I might trim it down so it would be the same size as this. But it's hard for me to trim perfectly good fabric down when it looks fine, and I really like how it finished, and it added an extra no more than an inch to the overall measurement of the quilt. But I just want you to see that if you're trying to use this, where we're going to cut this into triangles and then try to align them here, the likelihood that you'd have a stripe going right up and down through the middle is slim to none. So it's just a thought. I would get 2 yards of the fabric that you choose to piece with. And if you really love the fabric, get 3 yards. And then you have enough to decide how much wider you might want to make this on the outside edge. Okay, I'll come back to you now. All right, so I wanted to mention that, and I'm happy to answer any questions. If that's bringing questions up to your mind, I'll be checking for those here in a few minutes. Let me see the other important things. Okay, so as I said, it's just real important before you start cutting into your diamond borders that you read everything that we've provided for you to help. I want to save you from doing the thing that if you cut them 62.5 and your quilt's 63.5, now you have to add back another tiny inch of fabric, and nobody likes to do that. Okay, I've got some more news that I want to share with you from the quilt show people. Of course, Dee Christopher does these wonderful, Dee's Saturday classes. There's been so many good things. She's making that great little rooster quilt right now. Starting September 17th, she is going to do a really great class called the Handmade Quilt, and it uses a book of patterns called the Handmade Quilt. But she is going to address not only the hand instructions, but machine piecing as well. It's a pieced block. It's a really nice quilt pattern, and you would need the book in order to follow along with her. It's a skill builder, which is wonderful. If you're not super experienced and you're trying to expand your skills, it's a great way to learn, because she's going to cover how to make each block that's in the book. She will start with the simplest ones and move on to the more complex ones, the more challenging ones, so you build on your skills as you go, and then ultimately assembling and finishing the entire quilt. So you have all of those instructions. The project is 76 by 78, so that's a good size. It's similar in size to what we've done with the Block of the Month quilts. And there is a kit available, and I looked at it yesterday. They sent me this information, and I thought, oh man, I'm real tempted by that kit. It's a beautiful kit. They're blues and whites and a variety of shades. There's some purple, which I always gravitate to. And it's just really pretty. And you can find it in the kit in the store. Now, the kit includes the book. So if you don't have the book and you want the kit, the one purchase will give you both. If you don't want the kit, you still can buy the book separately, which you would need to do to be ready. This is going to start September 17th on Dee's Saturday classes. So I think you'd enjoy taking a look at those. You can find it on the store. Just go to the store and click on Handmade Quilt header, or in the search box, use Handmade Quilt. That's the name of the book, but it'll bring up it's really pretty. And I was real tempted. I've got too much else to do. I'm getting ready to do some secret sewing, so I don't have time to make another quilt this fall, but I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that, because these classes are really great and you can learn a lot from her right there in the comfort of your home. And then our wonderful Alex is starting her improv quilt. I am going to figure out how to squeeze that in, because that's not something that I particularly do much of, but I find it appealing. And so she is starting Wednesday, September 7th with her improv things, her blocks. We're going to start with the real simple little blocks, her little, X blocks or, piece blocks. And I'm just going to use fabric that I have around, but I will keep up with her as we go. I'll just mention the neutral quilt behind me. I keep calling it the neutral quilt. I've named it Disappearing Patchwork. Alex did a neutrals class. I went out and bought Alex's book again, because I had the book years ago and sold it at one of my little yard sales. So I had to get another copy of the book. And I've been tempted before to do the neutrals quilt. And it's not, I'm a color person. I do lots of color. And even my husband, who was helping me baste it, he says, did you make this? This really isn't you. And I said, no, it's not, but it's been appealing. So, and I just, Alex showed it the other day. I didn't send her the picture. She took it off on my blog or on Facebook and showed it there. And ultimately, sometime probably this winter, I'm going to do a sew along for that, a free sew along on the blog. So, okay, I am getting ready to see if you have any questions. As I mentioned, next month's Facebook Live will be October 7th, which is way late for most of you, because you will have already jumped into these, if you're keeping up to the diamond borders. Remember, you can't calculate your border sizes until you have sewn together, made the 2 applique blocks, and sewn them into the blocks you've already made, to give yourself the entire left-hand side of the quilt, so that you can measure it and know what size your border has to be. And now I'm going to look for some and see what kind of questions we've got. Alrighty, there we go. Alrighty, let me start back at the beginning. Okay, hey Victoria, I will see you tomorrow, Victoria. Missouri, Galena, Ohio. Okay, Washington, lots of hellos. San Antonio. Will I be at Houston? Yes, you're absolutely. I will be at Houston for 13, 14 days. I'll go down in October for market, and I stay through festival. So I will definitely be there, and I want to see as many of you there as possible. You'll need to come up to me and say hello, because you know what I look like. I, however, do not know what you look like. All right. One of our teachers is on here, a teacher, and she teaches 4th grade. It's her lunch break. Well, great, Christy. Good to see you. We love our teachers. It's a hard job. Northern North Carolina, New Hampshire, Central Coast. Some of you folks have got some really hot weather. Good morning, Silver Spring. Okay. Yeah, Rondi likes that. Yeah, Victoria's using Karen K. I will not be at PIQF, Rondi, Pacific International Quilt Festival. And Florida. Thank you, Dina. Dina says hi from Texas. She commented on how I look. I clean up from time to time. I'm putting together a trip to Texas in May, and right now I've got 3 contracts in place, and I will probably be there for a total of about 2 weeks, going place to place. So, Dina, if you're anywhere in the Houston, Austin area, let me know. We can see if we can get a group together there. Okay. Australia, Vicky, morning. It is very early morning for Vicky. Welcome, Vicky. Good day to you. Yeah, hand applique time takes some time. Melanie says, so glad you have figured this all out for us. Yeah, I math is kind of my thing. I do it for fun. So, okay, good. A couple people said, yep, they're caught up. That's really good. Yes. Yep, good. We've got people coming down to Houston. That's really great. And good. Thank you from Houston. All right. So I didn't see any specific questions about this. Absolutely, the questions. The forum is the best place to answer them. If you have, I do people write me questions on my blog as well, sometimes the specific one for the month. But the forum's a great place because I can answer there and lots of people can see it. Every month I've put up the month, I've already put it up for this month. It says month 9, ask questions here. There's a different topic, month 9, show your progress here, so that you can share with everybody what you're doing. And that's a great place to put this information. I'm even thinking that this information I've passed on today about the borders, I think I'm going to do a forum topic on that here in the next couple of days as I'm working on the video for that, and to put that up, and just these things that we've talked a little bit about, so that people, especially like I said, if you're going to piece that border instead of applique it, just find a different fabric that you love. There's nothing wrong with the kit fabric, but it would be a lot easier to use with a different background fabric, and then having more of it allows you to have that little floater border in there. And it's I'd get at least 2 yards. 2 will do it, but in my life, there's no such thing as too much fabric. So if I really like it, especially a background like that, a basic neutral background is just really, really great. So, all right, I think we're doing really well time-wise. I'll check one more time and see for any. Usually there's that one last-minute question that comes in right after, and I see it after I've hung up. So Barbara's question is it possible to paper piece the border? It is, but you wouldn't want to do it that way. Because of the way this is put together, and I'd have to go back to, let me go back to what I can see what I'm looking at here. Yeah, okay. You would have to make every one of these individual sections out of separate paper and then put them together. So it's just a matter of just piecing it regularly, and like you normally would. You'll need to be careful, and I had plenty of times when I had to go back and check to see that when I would open up the seams and go, okay, I didn't quite make that one just right. And in the beginning, well, I'll have lots of tips about this, but so there were places where I had to go back and tighten them up a little bit, but it was really no problem. And again, because once I have that border pieced completely, I will then calculate what my floater needs to be to make that pieced border, whatever size it is, fit exactly to the middle of the quilt. And you've got detailed instructions coming October 1st on how to do that. You'll have 5 pages of instructions that I have written for October 1st. So anyway, okay, well, like I said, I'm by the time we talk again, hopefully I will be getting real close, if I haven't already started, the secret sewing for next year's quilt. And that's always exciting when I'm ready to get going on it. So this weekend in the U.S. is a 3-day weekend, a holiday. It's called Labor Day on Monday, the first Monday in September. And it's to celebrate all those who work for their labors. So to the teachers, we say thank you for what you do. To everybody who, whatever your job is, it's just a way that we can celebrate the fact that most of us work really hard at whatever it is that we do. So I hope that wherever you are, that you have a good weekend, that the weather is not terrible. I know there's some real big heat in parts of our country, and there's a lot of rain. We're going to get some rain here, but we could use it. So anyway, so I look forward to seeing you October 7th, but please read everything that comes out before you